John Blake presents The Crossing, written by Wensley Clarkson and read by Joe Dow. Author's note. The River Thames and the Badlands of London, Kent and Essex dominate this story. But it's much more than just an exposé of the changing face of UK crime. Many of the criminals I've interviewed down the years had warned me about this new, chilling underworld, but I had to see it with my own eyes to completely appreciate how it's evolved. Within days of starting my research for this book, I realised there were many who didn't want me to expose this new crime phenomenon that now dominates the British underworld. Angry threats to myself and my family, followed by a mystery break-in at my office, felt like warnings. Also, there were some no-shows for meetings in and around the area where the crossing is located. Clearly, this was a dark and dangerous netherworld few wanted to talk about. But I soldiered on, because the key to my investigations inside the UK's crime lands has always been to ignore the threats. Because if someone really wants to harm myself or my family, they'll just do it, rather than giving me an advance warning. No one will want to talk to you, one former policeman in Kent told me, just before I agreed to write this book. He turned out to be wrong, but only because I refused to take no for an answer, and convinced many of my interviewees that I would not reveal their names. By a strange twist of fate, there was usually a ferocious wind whistling around the crossing whenever I visited. In the nearby areas of Kent and Essex, so closely associated with professional criminals for many years, I found deserted properties where British gangsters once lived before they were chased off their own homelands by a psychotic new breed of deadly gangster who had targeted this unfriendly corner of Kent, the so-called Garden of England. At times that same wind screamed so loudly in the areas around the crossing that it made it doubly hard to hear anyone when I talked to them outside. Then again, many of them clearly didn't want to hear what I was saying in the first place, and not even a gale-force wind could drown out the verbal abuse I received from those who refused point-blank to help and slammed their doors in my face. Indeed, many who know the characters involved in this story later admitted they were amazed some of them hadn't waved a gun in my face, because, as I was about to discover, firearms are prevalent across these badlands. This story takes place today, now, but the history of the area's underworld going back hundreds of years has played a crucial role in what has evolved in and around the crossing. My undeniable curiosity about the crossing and all that it represents was first fueled more than 10 years ago. I was investigating the fallout from 1983's world record-breaking Brinks-Mat gold bullion raid, when so-called old-school gangsters, who once thrived in that same area, were at their most powerful. Then, gun-crazy gangs from abroad began making inroads into these swathes of prime crime territory. One retired Scotland Yard detective told me back then, "The foreign gangs have started slaughtering the old-time British criminals. They're going to run this area one day." I was stunned that a place so deeply immersed in the history of British crime could be at the centre of such a cold-blooded underworld war, right on the doorstep of London. Then, as I began investigating the background to the crossing, I realised I'd stumbled on one of the UK's most disturbing and chilling crime stories. Ultimately, this book revolves around a way of life, a tough mentality deeply influenced by all the criminals you're going to read about here. To this day, many believe that none of this would have happened if the UK wasn't so closely connected to Europe and beyond. That's debatable, to say the least. But unpeeling this tale left me with myriad impressions of today's UK underworld and all the characters you're about to meet. As I researched and wrote this book, I realised some of my sources had shady ulterior motives. My aim has always been to show this story in a balanced light, not a version warped by the evil intent of people on both sides of the divide. Also, I wish to apologise in advance to the law-abiding citizens of every country whose criminals have recently landed on British shores. Of course, the majority of people from these countries deserve our utmost
Sample complete. Ready to continue?